Have you ever witnessed a single moment, a single spark that ignited an unstoppable blaze of truth? Picture this: a bustling airport lounge, a woman standing firm and dignified, and a guard whose piercing gaze and pointed questions shatter the calm of a luxury VIP setting. In that instant, the entire world is about to watch as a single act of prejudice ignites a global call for justice. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear isn't just a story. It's a testament to the power of resilience and the force of human unity. This is where one life, one voice changes everything. Ebony Reed woke up hours before dawn broke over Atlanta. Her flight was scheduled to depart Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport at 9:00 a.m. But Ebony never arrived at an airport without a buffer of time. She used to tell herself she liked the extra margin for comfort time to grab a coffee, settle in, and scroll through emails. But lately she realized another truth. Ever since she started climbing the ladder of success, she dreaded any scenario that might cast suspicion on her right to be in those elevated spaces her hard work had earned. Ebony was a 32-year-old entrepreneur whose online media company, Reedy, Media had gained rapid traction. She had become a fixture in motivational conferences, social media marketing seminars, and women in tech panels. She was no stranger to VIP lounges, thanks to her Platinum Delta Sky Miles credit card and a slew of accolades from industry leaders. It wasn't that Ebony fit the media's typical portrayal of an overnight success. Instead, she had fought her way through a labyrinth of challenges, financial, personal, and social, to stand confidently at the pinnacle of her career. On this particular morning, Ebony dressed in a sleek black blazer and matching trousers. She chose comfortable flats over stilettos, anticipating plenty of walking. She secured her coily hair in a neat updo that accentuated her high cheekbones, and she went with minimal makeup, just a touch of eyeliner and a hint of gloss. She smiled at her reflection in the mirror, repeating her silent mantra: "I belong here. I deserve to be here." Moments later, she was out the door, a roller bag trailing behind her. During the half-hour drive to the airport, Ebony's mind drifted to her upbringing on the south side of Chicago. Her father, Gregory Reed, had been a respected community leader who organized youth programs to deter kids from gang violence. He raised Ebony to believe that no dream was too big and no stage too grand, but to also keep her guard up. "Eyes open, Ebony," he used to say. "In this world, we have to stay vigilant." She glanced at her phone. Her mother had sent a text filled with prayer emojis and a quick, safe travels. "We're proud of you." Ebony closed her eyes momentarily, letting the wave of affection and gratitude wash over her. She was the first in her family to graduate from a top-tier university. The path from Ebony's old neighborhood to the hush of a first-class lounge had been paved by countless hours of determination, but it was also colored by fear that at any moment someone might challenge her presence. The city of Atlanta bustled awake as she neared the airport, bright billboards and neon signs illuminating the roads. She thought about her panel appearance in Los Angeles, where she was slated to speak alongside celebrities and high-profile entrepreneurs. In typical Ebony fashion, she planned to arrive at the Delta Sky Club lounge with enough time to calmly review her talking points. She had no idea that her life was about to be torn wide open. Inside the main terminal, Ebony checked her bag, breezed through security, and followed the familiar signs to the Delta Sky Club. Her phone buzzed with text messages and calendar reminders. She smiled at the gate agents, who recognized her from her frequent travels. The lounge entrance had sleek glass doors etched with the airline's logo. Ebony approached with her membership card in hand, an annual perk of her frequent flyer status. The lounge hostess, a friendly brunette in a crisp red blazer, flashed a welcoming smile. "Good morning," the hostess said. "May I see your boarding pass and membership card, please?" Ebony handed them over. The hostess scanned them without issue and returned them with a "Thank you, Ms. Reed. Enjoy your stay." Ebony's tension eased. This was one of the few places in an airport she felt truly at ease. Soft lighting, plush seats, and a buffet spread awaited her. She found an open seat near a window overlooking the tarmac. Outside, planes were taking off into the early morning sky. Ebony leaned back and took out her phone, shooting off an email to her assistant and a quick text to her mother. Made it to the lounge, safe. "Love you," she exhaled slowly, letting the calm envelop her. She was about to set down her phone and walk to the breakfast spread when she noticed a tall man in a security uniform standing at the lounge's entrance, scanning the room. His posture was rigid, eyes narrowed. Something about his demeanor set off alarm bells. Ebony recalled her father's caution. "Stay vigilant." But she shook the thought away, reminding herself that she had every right to be here. Maybe he's just scanning for any suspicious behavior, she thought. He doesn't even see me. Yet, as Ebony rose from her seat, the guard's eyes locked onto her. Instantly, Ebony felt the weight of that gaze, a silent but resounding question. What is she doing in here? She tried to shake off the feeling, but her heart rate sped up in a telltale sign of anxious anticipation. Usually, Ebony had a gift for reading the room. She gave motivational talks about diversity and inclusion after all. But this moment felt off, as though a magnetic field was drawing tension to her. She took a slow breath, determined to stay poised. You deserve to be here, she told herself once more. Deciding not to let the looming figure disrupt her routine, Ebony made her way to the buffet, carefully layering scrambled eggs, turkey bacon, and a slice of wheat toast onto a small plate. She poured herself a cup of black coffee. With plate and mug in hand, Ebony turned around, only to realize the security guard had followed her, matching her footsteps with an unsettling precision. He was a tall, broad-shouldered white man, with short cropped hair and an intense stare. Ebony glanced at the nameplate on his uniform, Beckett. He stood a few feet away, but close enough that Ebony could almost feel the heat of his presence. For a second, Ebony considered striking up a polite conversation, but something about his expression said he wasn't in the mood for pleasantries. She turned away and carried her breakfast to her seat, her nerves on high alert. As Ebony settled into the plush chair, she saw Beckett approach. She forced a calm smile. "Is something wrong, officer?" she asked, lifting her coffee cup to her lips to mask her growing discomfort. His response was immediate and cold. "I need to see your lounge access card." Ebony blinked. She had already shown the lounge hostess her credentials. "I've already checked in," she replied politely but firmly. "Is there a problem?" His jaw tightened. "We're conducting random checks." A swirl of unease filled Ebony's chest. She tried to keep her voice level, handing over the membership card once again. He took a moment to scan every detail, as though searching for a forgery. Finally, he nodded, but did not apologize or offer any explanation. He walked away, leaving Ebony with a sour taste in her mouth and a trembling in her hands that made her set down the coffee cup. She tried to brush it off. She told herself it was routine that sometimes the lounge staff did random checks. Yet the voice at the back of her head whispered, "You know this was more than routine." Before Ebony had ever considered starting her own company, She was just a bright girl from a difficult neighborhood, trying to stand out in a world that rarely gave her the benefit of the doubt. She was used to microaggressions like the teacher who assumed Ebony's top-notch essays were plagiarized, or the store clerk who demanded to see multiple forms of ID for Ebony to use her debit card. But Ebony had used these injustices to fuel her ambition. She put herself through college with a combination of scholarships, part-time jobs, and her father's unwavering emotional support. After graduating, Ebony interned at a digital marketing agency, quickly becoming known for her creativity and unstoppable work ethic. Eventually, she launched Reed Media out of a co-working space. Over the next 4 years, her digital marketing tips, especially tailored for minority-owned businesses, exploded in popularity. She became a sought-after public speaker and brand ambassador, forging a path that merged tech marketing and social justice. Yet for all her success, Ebony remained acutely aware of subtle prejudices. Some might see her success as a shield, but Ebony knew it was more like a spotlight illuminating her every move. She had no illusions that her achievements exempted her from suspicion. "Stay vigilant," as her father always said. 15 minutes after Beckett's departure, Ebony finished her breakfast. Deciding to stretch her legs, she stepped away from her seat to approach the lounge's panoramic windows where she could watch the planes taxiing. She was admiring a massive Boeing 767 when she heard heavy footsteps behind her. Beckett again. He cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I'd like you to come with me to the lounge reception desk," he said. The edge in his voice made Ebony's stomach lurch. She turned. "Why is there an issue with my membership or my ticket? Please just come with me," he repeated louder this time. Heads began turning. Some passengers glanced up from their smartphones and newspapers, scanning the scene with curiosity. A few eyebrows lifted in silent question, while others seemed to sense the tension. Ebony walked briskly behind Beckett, mentally replaying every possible reason for this confrontation. Had her flight been cancelled? Was there a problem with her ID? The hostess at the desk looked startled. To see them approach. "Is there a problem?" the hostess asked, her eyes darting between Ebony and Beckett. "She needs to verify her membership status and ticket," Beckett said, voice devoid of warmth. "But I already did that," the hostess replied, flipping through the computer screen. She typed Ebony's name. "Everything seems fine here." Ebony's heart pounded in her ribcage. She found her voice steadier than she felt. "Could you please explain the nature of these additional checks? If there's an official policy, I'd appreciate seeing it." Beckett's brow furrowed, as if he wasn't accustomed to being questioned. "We have a right to verify lounge access at any time," he said flatly. The hostess scrolled through Ebony's flight and membership details. Yes, Ms. Reed has a valid membership. She's also booked in first class for her flight to Los Angeles. Ebony locked eyes with the hostess. "So there's no issue, correct?" The hostess nodded. "None whatsoever." Beckett squared his shoulders, looking dissatisfied with the outcome. Ebony could feel the stares of onlookers. She wondered if they saw the fear flickering in her eyes. With no more official reason to detain her, Beckett stepped back. "You can go," he said tersely, as though Ebony had inconvenienced him. Then he turned and walked away. Ebony released a shaky breath, adrenaline coursing through her. Another wave of humiliation washed over her, mixing with indignation. Ebony returned to her seat, rummaging through her purse for her phone. She opened a text conversation with her best friend, Jade, typing quickly. "Ebony, 7:45 a.m. Something weird is going on. Lounge security singled me out, asked me for my credentials twice, making me anxious." Jade's response was swift. "Jade, 7:47 a.m. That's messed up." You okay? Need me to call you? Ebony. Considered it, but she wanted to stay composed. She typed back. Ebony, 7:48 a.m. I'm okay, just disconcerting. I'll keep you posted. Trying to calm herself. Ebony took a few deep breaths. She noticed more stares from other passengers. Some seemed sympathetic, others indifferent. A middle-aged black couple seated a few chairs away gave her a look of quiet solidarity. Ebony found solace in that fleeting sense of unspoken support. She checked the time, 8:00 a.m. Her flight was due to board at 8:30. She decided to get her belongings together and head toward the gate early, hoping to leave the tension behind. As Ebony was about to exit the lounge, Beckett materialized once more at the glass doors. This time, he was accompanied by another uniformed security officer, a woman with short blonde hair, nameplate, reading Anderson. Ebony's stomach knotted. The abrupt presence of two security guards felt like an ambush. Beckett blocked the doorway. Ma'am, we're going to need you to come with us. Ebony gripped the handle of her roller bag, trying to steady her nerves. Am I being detained, ma'am? I'm asking you to step aside so we can ask you some questions, he replied. Ebony's heart pounded so hard that she felt it in her throat. Under what suspicion she asked, her voice straining to remain calm. I've done nothing wrong. I've verified my credentials. My flight is boarding soon. The blonde officer Anderson cleared her throat. It's a standard security check, ma'am. Ebony's gaze darted between the two officers. Standard? You've already checked me twice. This isn't standard. This is harassment. Passengers in the lounge began to cluster around their curiosity, piqued by the raised voices. Some lifted their phones discreetly recording. Others exchanged whispers, their eyes darting from Ebony to the guards. Beckett's voice rose, echoing in the lounge. We have the authority to conduct further questioning on travelers who appear to be suspicious. You need to come with us now. Ebony felt heat flush her cheeks. Suspicious. That word landed on her chest like a brand. She mustered her resolve. What exactly do you find suspicious about a passenger sitting in a lounge who has shown valid access credentials twice? For a moment, neither guard answered. The hush of the lounge enveloped them, save for the faint hum of muffled chatter. Then Beckett gestured for Ebony to move away from the entrance. We can either do this the easy way, or I can call airport security to escort you out. It was a threat. Ebony's stomach dropped. She realized the situation was teetering on the edge of something explosive. She glanced around. Cameras were aimed in her direction. Her mind raced, recalling every conversation about best practices when confronted by authority as a black woman in America. Remain calm, polite, but firm. Do not escalate. Do not resist. Ebony took a slow breath, then nodded. All right, she said. But I want you to know this is entirely out of line. Beckett said nothing, but Ebony caught the triumphant gleam in his eyes. She followed the guards to a small, glass-enclosed side room, typically reserved for private calls or small meetings. The door closed behind them with a click. Once inside, Ebony set her bag down. The space was cramped with a small, circular table and 4 chairs. Anderson positioned herself near the door, while Beckett stood arms crossed in front of Ebony. Name, Beckett demanded. Ebony Reed. I've shown you my ID, you know that already. Reason for traveling? Ebony huffed quietly. Business. I'm scheduled to speak at a marketing conference in Los Angeles. He scribbled something on a notepad. Where are you staying in Los Angeles? Ebony pursed her lips, feeling the frustration mount. At the Westin Bonaventure Hotel. It's near the conference center. What do you do for a living? Beckett continued. I own a digital media company. She could see his jaw clench. It was as though he wanted to unravel her story. Find some discrepancy that would justify his suspicion. Beckett glanced at Anderson, who stared at Ebony with a cautious gaze, but said nothing. How often do you travel? Beckett asked. Weekly, sometimes more, Ebony replied. I'm also a Delta Platinum Medallion member. I have lounge access, which I've verified multiple times. You're well aware of that. Anderson shifted from one foot to the other. Beckett tapped his pen on the table, his posture stiff. Ebony suspected he was looking for any excuse, any slip to prolong this interrogation. This is ridiculous, Ebony said, her tone edging with anger. I've answered all your questions. I'm going to miss my flight if you continue to detain me without cause. Her words seemed to spark a flicker of frustration on Anderson's face. The female officer finally spoke. Beckett, maybe we should... Beckett raised a hand to silence her. We're not done. He looked Ebony in the eye. Have you been approached by any other law enforcement agencies recently? Ebony's eyes widened. What on earth are you implying? Just answer the question, he snapped. Ebony swallowed, trying to keep her voice calm. No, of course not. A tense silence filled the tiny room. Ebony wondered if the entire lounge was eavesdropping on the muffled exchange. By now, she was certain this had nothing to do with standard procedure. She wondered if her presence, her very identity, was fueling Beckett's hostility. At last, Beckett tossed his pen onto the table and glared at Ebony as though she had somehow wronged him. Fine. You're free to go, he said. Anderson opened the door, relief flickering across her face. Ebony retrieved her suitcase, her pulse thudding in her ears. She looked Beckett straight in the eyes. This isn't over, she said quietly. I'll be filing a complaint. He offered a dismissive snort as if her words were inconsequential. Ebony turned on her heels and walked out into the lounge, every cell in her body buzzing with adrenaline and outrage. The lounge was now abuzz. People stared openly. Some took photos or short videos. Ebony realized that the tense standoff had not gone unnoticed. She caught the sympathetic eye of the black couple she'd noticed earlier. The woman mouthed, "Are you okay?" Ebony managed a small nod. She needed to catch her flight, but she also wanted to document what had happened. She pulled out her phone, unlocked the camera, and began recording a quick self-shot video. Her voice was shaky. My name is Ebony Reed. I'm here at the Delta Sky Club Lounge in Hartsfield, Jackson, Atlanta International Airport. This morning I was singled out and interrogated by a security guard multiple times despite having valid credentials. I was threatened with removal if I didn't comply. This is unacceptable. Just then the hostess from earlier rushed over. Ms. Reed. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I don't know why he was targeting you. Please, if there's anything we can do. Ebony ended her recording and looked at the hostess. I appreciate your concern, but I have a flight to catch, she said. I'll be filing a formal complaint. The hostess nodded apologetically. Ebony grabbed her belongings and hurried toward the concourse. Her flight was due to start boarding in minutes. She power-walked to the gate, checked in with the agent, and found her seat in first class. As she settled in, her hands still trembled. She felt a swirl of anger, humiliation, and sadness. She also felt a fierce determination rising within her. This was not going to be brushed under the rug. Before the plane took off, Ebony uploaded the video to her Instagram account, where she had nearly 2 million followers. The caption read, "Harassed for hat of flying while black." This morning at Atlanta's airport lounge, I was interrogated repeatedly, despite valid credentials. Enough is enough. This ends now. #Delta Sky Club. Within minutes, notifications started flooding in. Comments ranged from shock and outrage to supportive words urging Ebony to take legal action. Ebony switched her phone to airplane mode and sighed, falling for the 5-hour flight. She had no idea that by the time she landed, her life and the guard's life would be turned upside down. When Ebony's flight touched down in Los Angeles, she turned off airplane mode and was immediately bombarded by a stream of alerts. Text messages, direct messages, emails. Her phone practically vibrated off the tray table. She scrolled through notifications, eyes widening at what she saw. Her post had gone viral. Thousands of comments poured in. Prominent activists, celebrities, and politicians had shared it. The hashtags #flying, while black and #thisendsnow were trending on Twitter. Ebony's inbox was flooded with interview requests from major news outlets, CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, and even the BBC. As Ebony exited the plane, she felt dazed. She had expected some reaction, sure, but this was a global firestorm. Adrenaline fueled each step as she navigated the terminal phone pressed to her ear. She answered call after call from journalist after journalist, each wanting to hear her story firsthand. She was also fielding texts from her friends, family, and staff. Jade had sent a flurry of messages. Her mother had left a voicemail, her voice trembling with a mixture of concern and pride. Her father's text read simply, "Stand strong, Ebony." Ebony blinked back tears, feeling a surge of love for her parents. She was quickly ushered into a flurry of potential media opportunities. Meanwhile, she still had a speaking engagement to attend in less than 24 hours. Back in Atlanta, word had reached Delta's corporate offices. Vice President of Corporate Communications, Carol Sterling, had just arrived for her 10:00 a.m. meeting when she was alerted to a PR meltdown. Carol scanned Ebony's post, her stomach sinking. She knew Ebony's name, Reedy Media, had a partnership with Delta that spotlighted diverse entrepreneurs. This was a disaster on multiple levels. She hurried into an emergency meeting with Delta's top brass, including the head of security. "Do we have any statement from the guard or lounge staff?" Carol asked, scanning the flurry of internal emails. The head of security, Ron Patterson, frowned. "All we know is that Officer Beckett conducted repeated ID checks on Ms. Reed, claiming she looked suspicious. The lounge staff tried to intervene, but it escalated." Carol's eyes flashed with anger. "We need a full internal investigation, immediately. Also, Ebony Reed is a high-profile entrepreneur and influencer. This is going to cost us dearly if we don't handle it well. I want to see Beckett's file. Has he had complaints before?" Patterson hesitated. "There was a minor incident a few months ago, but it didn't go anywhere. We're reviewing it." Carol grimaced. "We need to contain this. Draft an official apology and ensure Ebony Reed's legal team is contacted. We cannot afford to stay silent." Within the hour, Delta's official Twitter account posted a statement acknowledging the incident and promising a thorough investigation. But the post was met with a chorus of skeptical and outraged responses, many pointing out that Ebony's experience was part of a larger pattern of racial profiling at airports. By the time Ebony reached her hotel in Los Angeles, she was exhausted. Her phone was still ringing off the hook. She collapsed onto the bed, trying to collect her thoughts. Jade called, her voice trembling with emotion. "Ebony, you're everywhere. CNN wants you for a live interview. So does MSNBC. And the Today Show. What do you want to do?" Ebony's mind spun. She was scheduled to speak at the marketing conference the next day, but the media storm had overshadowed everything else. She realized that ignoring this moment would be a mistake. This was bigger than her personal inconvenience. Her experience was emblematic of a systemic issue. "Let's schedule a press conference," Ebony said, surprising even herself with the resolve in her voice. "I'll talk publicly about what happened, but I also want to highlight how often this happens to people who aren't as visible as me. Jade, can you help coordinate?" Jade's voice brightened. "Absolutely. We can hold it at the hotel conference room. I'll send out invites to all the major outlets. Let's do this right." As Ebony hung up, she stared at the ceiling, a wave of memories rushing over her. She remembered being 10 years old at a grocery store, watching in confusion as a security guard followed her and her mother, who had a baby stroller and a shopping basket. She recalled the hot flush of shame when the guard demanded to see their receipt at the exit, even though the white family ahead of them had walked out without question. She remembered how her mother's eyes filled with tears, but her mother had swallowed that pain, not wanting to upset Ebony. That memory fueled Ebony's decision to speak out, to not let this become another silent wound. She stood, squared her shoulders, and decided to use her platform for something bigger than her own vindication. The hotel conference room was packed with reporters, cameras, and microphones. Ebony hadn't expected such a large turnout, but the story had taken on a life of its own. She approached the podium, feeling a sudden rush of nerves. Jade stood nearby, giving her an encouraging nod. The cameras flashed incessantly. Ebony cleared her throat and began. "Good afternoon. My name is Ebony Reed, founder and CEO of Reed Media. Yesterday at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, I was subjected to repeated questioning and harassment by a security officer who did not believe I belonged in a first-class lounge, despite my valid credentials. This incident is not isolated. It reflects a broader pattern of racial profiling that has caused countless people, especially black travelers, to feel unwelcome and unsafe in spaces they have every right to occupy. This is not just about me. It's about shining a light on systemic biases that we often ignore or downplay. I am calling for an investigation into airport security practices, better training for staff, and a clear, transparent policy on how suspicious behavior is defined. I will be taking legal steps to ensure accountability, and I encourage anyone who has experienced similar discrimination to speak out. We must do better as a society. No one should have to justify their presence in a space they've rightfully earned access to simply because of the color of their skin." "Thank you." Ebony stepped back from the podium, her heart hammering. The reporters clamored with questions, microphones thrust forward. Ebony answered as best she could, reiterating her commitment to pursuing legal avenues. The press conference ended in a chorus of camera clicks and urgent voices. Ebony felt both drained and empowered. The die was cast. There was no turning back. In the days that followed, Ebony's social media exploded. Her number of followers doubled, then tripled. People from around the world shared personal stories of racial profiling at airports, hotels, shops, stories that resonated with Ebony's experience. Celebrities like Viola Davis and Ava DuVernay reposted Ebony's video, praising her courage. Civil rights organizations, including the NAACP, publicly backed her. But the wave of support also triggered backlash. Trolls flooded Ebony's inbox with hateful messages accusing her of playing the race card. A few threatened violence. Ebony tried to steel herself against the negativity, reminding herself of the thousands of messages of solidarity. Meanwhile, Delta's leadership scrambled to contain the fallout. They suspended Officer Beckett pending investigation. Official apologies were issued, but Ebony's supporters demanded deeper reforms. While Ebony's story garnered international attention, the man at the center of the controversy, Officer Beckett, found himself thrust under an unwelcome spotlight. His face was plastered on social media alongside accusations of racial bias. Journalists unearthed past complaints about his conduct, revealing a pattern of targeting passengers of color. Soon, to fire Beckett and #airline. Accountability began trending. Protesters organized outside Hartsfield-Jackson's terminals. Passengers threatened to boycott Delta unless they took decisive action. Beckett's personal social media accounts were bombarded with angry comments. Neighbors began avoiding him. Old high school acquaintances posted about his bigoted remarks from years ago. Within a week, Beckett was officially terminated, with the airline citing egregious misconduct. The news spread swiftly, overshadowed only by Ebony's continuing media presence. Lawyers for Ebony and the airline were in preliminary talks about a settlement for emotional distress and defamation. But Ebony insisted on systemic changes, mandatory bias training for all airline staff, and revised security protocols. Amid the public firestorm, Ebony grappled with private emotions. She was grateful for the massive support, but also felt weighed down by the intensity of it all. She hadn't asked to become the face of another airline discrimination scandal, but she recognized the significance of her platform. Late one night in her Los Angeles hotel suite, she finally let down her guard. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she talked to her mother on the phone. "Mom, I'm tired," she whispered. "This weight, it's so heavy. I'm just one person." Her mother's voice was gentle, tinged with pride. "Baby, sometimes it only takes one person to shift the conversation. Your father and I are here for you." "Keep going, Ebony. This matters." The call ended, but her mother's words lingered. Ebony inhaled deeply, reaffirming her commitment to push forward. She realized that her pain, her exhaustion, was part of a larger calling. This was about more than Ebony Reed. This was about every person who had been told they didn't belong. A week after the incident, Ebony flew back to Atlanta, this time not just as a passenger, but as a potential agent of change. She was invited to meet with Delta's executive board to discuss policy reforms. Walking into Delta's corporate headquarters, Ebony felt an electrifying mixture of apprehension and determination. Carol Sterling greeted her in the reception area. "Ms. Reed," she said, offering a handshake. "Thank you for meeting with us. We're eager to find a path forward that addresses your concerns." Ebony nodded, meeting Carol's gaze. "I'm here because I want to see real changes, not just a payout." Carol smiled politely. "Understood." They proceeded to a large conference room, where Ebony was introduced to the airline's CEO, Mark Thompson, and several vice presidents. The conversation began with formalities, apologies, acknowledgements of Ebony's ordeal, and a promise of internal reviews. But Ebony pressed for specifics. How will you ensure your security protocols don't become a license for profiling? How will you train your staff to recognize and counter unconscious bias? What accountability measures will be in place for repeated infractions? A hush fell over the room. Thompson cleared his throat. "We're prepared to invest in comprehensive bias training in collaboration with leading experts. We're also open to your input, Ms. Reed. It's clear we need an outside perspective on how these policies impact travelers of color." Ebony's mind whirled. She hadn't expected them to be this open, or perhaps they were simply eager to stem the PR nightmare. Regardless, she recognized an opportunity to shape an entire industry's approach to handling racial discrimination. The details would be complex, the implementation messy. But it was a step in the right direction. Over the next month, Ebony collaborated with civil rights experts, including attorneys from the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, to draft recommendations. She insisted on structural changes, standardized guidelines for suspicious behavior, mandatory de-escalation training, and a transparent complaint process for passengers who felt they had been profiled. Ebony also stipulated that a portion of the airline's settlement would fund scholarships for minority students pursuing careers in aviation or business. Finally, Ebony's legal team and Delta's representatives agreed on a settlement. The terms remained confidential, but sources leaked that it was a multi-million-dollar payout. More importantly, Ebony ensured that real policies were adopted. She made it clear that money alone could not right systemic wrongs. In the midst of these negotiations, Ebony received an unexpected letter. It was from a man named Frank Beckett. She stared at the envelope, uncertain whether to open it. Eventually, curiosity won. Inside, she found a handwritten note. Ms. Reed, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from. I accept full responsibility for my actions that day. My conduct was unprofessional and fueled by biases I didn't want to admit I had. Losing my job made me realize how deeply those biases ran. I'm not asking for forgiveness, but I want you to know I'm seeking help to understand and unlearn the prejudices I've carried. I can't change the past, but I want to be better. Sincerely, Frank Beckett. Ebony read the note twice, her emotions in turmoil. A part of her felt raw anger. How could he have done this to her in the first place? But another part recognized that acknowledging one's flaws was the first step to genuine change. She didn't know if Beckett was sincere, but she resolved not to let his actions define her own capacity for grace. She folded the letter and set it aside. She decided for now to focus on the future she was building. With Ebony's story capturing worldwide attention, her public speaking engagements evolved. Invitations poured in from universities, corporations, and community organizations, wanting to hear her speak about her experience and the broader issues of racial profiling, prejudice, and corporate accountability. She addressed a packed auditorium at Spelman College in Atlanta, telling her story and emphasizing the need for collective action. Students listened with rapt attention, many snapping their fingers in agreement or wiping tears. Ebony left them with a call to activism. Don't let them question your presence in spaces you've rightfully earned. Demand accountability from every institution, every system. Her voice resonated far beyond Atlanta. Ebony was featured on CNN's Black in America segment, highlighting her role in fostering systemic reform. She also appeared on Good Morning America, where she spoke candidly about the emotional toll of the incident, her legal battle, and her hope that change was possible. Months passed, and Ebony found herself back in Los Angeles, stepping onto the stage at a major tech conference. As she looked out over the crowd, she saw faces of all backgrounds. She spoke passionately about entrepreneurship, resilience, and inclusion. She mentioned with pointed emotion the airport incident that changed her life. I never asked to be in a high-profile confrontation with security. Ebony told the audience, her voice steady. But that day in the lounge, my presence was questioned, my worthiness challenged simply because I was seen as an anomaly. The truth is, we all belong in spaces of opportunity and success. No one has the right to question that based on a stereotype. The audience erupted in applause, many standing to cheer. Ebony felt a renewed sense of purpose. The trauma from that day would always linger, but it had become the catalyst for change, both in corporate policies and in her personal trajectory as an advocate. After a whirlwind year of activism, media appearances and tense negotiations with corporate giants, Ebony needed something no headline or hashtag could offer peace. So she boarded a quiet flight home to Chicago, craving the comfort of familiar streets and the embrace of the people who had always believed in her, even before the world knew her name. Her parents welcomed her at the door with open arms. The aroma of collard greens, baked mac and cheese, and her mother's famous cornbread wrapped around Ebony like a warm blanket. It was a meal she'd dreamed about during the most isolating moments of her rise. Moments when the pressure of being a public symbol nearly crushed her spirit. That evening they gathered around the dining table, laughter bouncing off the walls as they swapped memories and clinked glasses of sweet tea. Her father Gregory, who had grown quieter in recent years, suddenly reached across the table and placed his weathered hand over hers. "I always told you to keep your eyes open," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I never imagined how bright your light would shine." Ebony blinked back tears, nodding. "I just did what was necessary, Dad. I didn't want to, but someone had to. I hope it makes things easier for the next generation." Her mother leaned in. "You didn't just make it easier, baby. You made it undeniable." Later that night, Ebony slipped on a hoodie and took a walk through the old neighborhood. The streetlights flickered, illuminating cracked sidewalks and corner stores still standing from her childhood. She passed the community center, where her father had taught local teens about leadership and integrity. Inside, she could hear kids laughing, sneakers squeaking on hardwood, as a pickup game raged on. She paused, watching, through the chain-link fence. It was here on these modest blocks that she'd learned resilience. She remembered the times she'd walked home with her backpack full of textbooks, hearing slurs from passers-by or being followed in stores by suspicious clerks. She didn't know then that each indignity would one day forge steel in her bones. A small girl ran up to the gate and waved at her wide-eyed. "Aren't you the lady from the news?" she asked breathlessly. Ebony smiled gently. "I guess I am." The girl's eyes lit up. "I want to be like you when I grow up." Ebony crouched down, brushing the girl's hair from her face. "Then promise me something. Never let anyone make you feel like you don't belong. Not anywhere." "I promise," the girl whispered. As she walked back home, Ebony knew she hadn't just returned to Chicago. She'd come full circle, not as a wounded traveler, but as a symbol of hope and a living reminder that change starts with the courage to speak, even when your voice shakes. Weeks after her homecoming, Ebony found herself seated across from Delta's senior leadership team one final time. The conference room had a different energy now, less tense, more collaborative. The air no longer crackled with the urgency of damage control. Instead, there was a quiet reverence, an unspoken acknowledgement of the journey they had all endured, one that had changed the airline and perhaps the industry forever. The press release had been drafted, edited, and approved in a series of late-night meetings and phone calls. But Ebony had insisted on one thing: her voice would shape the final version. This wasn't just a corporate statement, it was a declaration of accountability and transformation. The release began with a firm acknowledgement of the incident at Hartsfield-Jackson and the harm caused. It didn't shy away from the words racial profiling or bias, and it didn't hide behind vague corporate language. It detailed the corrective actions taken. Officer Beckett's termination, the comprehensive bias and de-escalation training, now mandatory for all Delta Sky Club staff, and the creation of an internal reporting channel for travelers who felt mistreated. Ebony had also worked with the ACLU and civil rights attorneys to help Delta implement clear protocols for identifying suspicious behavior in ways that could no longer be weaponized against marginalized passengers. The airline pledged to review all profiling-related complaints with third-party oversight. One key section of the release included a direct quote from Ebony. "True progress happens when we confront uncomfortable truths and commit to growth." I never wanted to be the face of this movement, but once that moment came, I couldn't turn away. I'm proud of the steps we've taken, but this is only the beginning. We must continue working to ensure every traveler, regardless of background, feels safe, respected, and welcomed. It's not just about corporate responsibility, it's about human dignity. As the statement circulated across media outlets, it became clear this wasn't just a PR patch job. It was a precedent. Other airlines reached out inquiring about Ebony's consulting availability. Advocacy groups called it a landmark shift in airline equity standards. Delta saw a spike in positive brand sentiment, not because they spun the story, but because they owned it. That evening, Ebony sat alone in her Atlanta apartment, rereading the press release online. Her phone buzzed non-stop with news alerts and messages from people who'd been following her story since day one. But one message stood out. It was a short email from a black woman in Detroit. "I was denied lounge access last year, humiliated in front of my kids. I stayed quiet. But you didn't. Thank you, Ms. Reed. You spoke for all of us." Ebony exhaled a slow, full breath. Change was never simple, but it was real, and it had begun. 6 months after that morning in the VIP lounge, Ebony Reed sat in a sun-drenched corner office at Reedy Media's new headquarters in downtown Atlanta. The view from the 35th floor stretched across the city, where the glass and steel skyline shimmered against a pale blue sky. Floor-to-ceiling windows allowed sunlight to pour in, casting golden light on the shelves, lined with awards-framed press clippings and photographs from Ebony's whirlwind year of advocacy and transformation. She swiveled in her chair slowly, her fingers tracing the edge of a photo on her desk, one of her at Spelman College, surrounded by young women who had waited in line just to thank her for her courage. Behind her, a glass case displayed the Reedy Media mission, etched in brass, powering change through stories. Her calendar was filled with back-to-back consultations. Law firms, universities, airlines, and global corporations now sought her insight on equity training and policy reform. What had begun as a traumatic encounter had blossomed into an unplanned second career activism through action, justice through strategy. Her assistant tapped on the door. Another international request just came in from a major airline in Switzerland. They want to hire you to help audit their security policies. Ebony raised an eyebrow. Switzerland? Her assistant nodded, grinning. Looks like your name's traveling faster than any plane. Ebony chuckled, then gave a nod. Let's set up a call. But not today. The assistant understood. Today wasn't for business. Once alone again, Ebony turned back to her laptop. She pulled up a draft of her upcoming TED Talk speech. The theme was the power of being seen. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard for a long moment before she began typing. As she wrote, her mind drifted not to the confrontation with Beckett, but to the aftermath. She thought of the thousands of messages she'd received, each one its own quiet story of pain, injustice, or gratitude. She remembered the woman from Detroit who thanked her for speaking out. The little girl in her Chicago neighborhood who said she wanted to grow up to be just like Miss Reed. Even Officer Beckett's letter, now folded and tucked into a drawer, still crossed her mind from time to time. She had never written back. Maybe she never would. But she hadn't thrown it away either. What she had come to understand was this: the impact of what happened to her extended far beyond one airport, one airline, or one Instagram video. It had cracked open a conversation. It had forced institutions to confront what they had long ignored. And it had placed Ebony Reed in a rare position, one where her voice, once questioned in a lounge she had every right to be in, now echoed in boardrooms and global forums. Her phone buzzed a notification from her Instagram. She glanced at the screen. Another post had gone viral. A video of a black father holding his baby while explaining why Ebony's story taught him to never accept silence in the face of discrimination. Ebony tapped the heart. Icon smiled and whispered, "Keep going." She turned back to her laptop. The cursor blinked, waiting, and she began to write again. Because her story wasn't over. It was just the beginning of something even bigger. In the end, Ebony's story proves that a single moment can spark a revolution in how we treat one another, whether in an upscale lounge or everyday life. Her perseverance in the face of racial profiling led to changes that will protect countless travelers, opening our eyes to the importance of standing up when it matters most. It reminds us that justice starts with small actions like hitting record, demanding answers, and refusing to be silenced. If this story moved you, then join us in shining a brighter light on the issues that matter. Share this video to continue the conversation and encourage others to stand up against discrimination in all its forms. Drop a comment with your thoughts or a similar experience, because your voice matters. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more content that challenges norms and inspires change. Together we can make a difference.